Teachers of Reddit. What's the funniest thing a student has written in an essay that they clearly forgot to delete? One of my 14-year-old English students wrote for her thesis on a final essay as for evidence. Just keep in mind I'm right about this one and don't ask any questions. Apparently she wrote it as a joke and forgot to take it out. Was she right though? You're asking questions. I did it once in college. I always left notes to myself in the paper on the top block where my name, course number, and date went. That I'd delete after I was done and ready to submit. I left a note to justify the margins on my paper. When I got my paper back I realized that not only did I fail to delete that note, I also didn't justify the margins either. Nothing was said by the professor, but I felt like an idiot that I wrote a note to myself and didn't delete it or even do what I told myself to do and turned in that paper. Your professor didn't care. Or it was a robot and processed the command correctly, justifying the margins in his eye sensors. While finishing my thesis, I went a few days with almost no sleep, which often caused me falling asleep by my PC. As a result, some parts had unfinished sentences or even paragraphs. Some sentences made no sense at all and a few times there were words numbers inserted randomly in the text. Had no time to do any check before submitting, so I only found out afterwards. I got an A. Suppose my hypothesis was extraordinarily good. Plot twist. It was a thesis about sleep deprivation. Depraved sleeping seems like a subject in need of further research. Not me. But this happened to my best friend. While we were in class the teacher asked her to come and talk to her for a while. Turns out she accidentally uploaded a file of over 10k words just saying llama because she forgot to delete it. What the hell? How long did she spend writing llama? LMAO. Copy and paste. Works really fast. Not a teacher. But I was writing about the change in attitude towards Muslims after 9/11 and I referred to it as everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked. That's ducking hilarious. I legit laughed out loud at this. Thank you. Lomfeo. I needed 20 drawn pictures for my art file. I compared them and some of my fan art was better than my general art. My teachers unfortunately recognized some and wrote in comments, is that Twilight about the one because it was a vampire's diaries and had fangs. At the next class he was showing the best drawing and showed my Gilmore Girls and Friends drawings in front of the whole class. That was embarrassing but I got an A+ at least despite my shitty drawings. Apparently they weren't shitty, you did get an A+. Your teacher might be a CW fan. Not a teacher but my friend once wrote in a report, teacher's name, sucks dong and never took it out. The teacher never made any comment of it. I'm pretty sure they never even read the report and just gave him a grade because they were pretty lazy lol. Teacher read it and rolled eyes. Honestly I don't think he read it. He had 30 page reports to mark and he got all of our marks back within 3 days. The mark we all got just so happened to be the mark we were at in the course at the time. Haha. I had a phase of insert wild analogies to make my paper somewhat interesting to read and write. So I'd take long trips through analogy land and try to make a point through it. I had to write an essay about the importance of oil in cars and other such devices. I covered topics about how it prevents rust, etc. Then I touched on reducing friction and used the analogy of me sliding butt naked through one of those plastics tarps, with and without lubricant. I totally blanked and forgot to delete it and replace it. I still passed with flying colors, and my tutor certainly copied the document and put it in his presentation for our next tutorial. Student here. Massively screwed up my A-levels, UK, and halfway through the paper I just gave up and started a one-sided conversation with the person who would be marking my exam in the rest of the paper. Asked how their life was going. If they taught my exam papers subject or just marked for the money. Apologized for making them sit through my terrible paper, etc. Never got a response. I used to help mark A-level papers. Got quite a few of these with a letter written to the marker. Some were apologies for not doing better. Some quite heartfelt. The one that sticks with me most was someone berating the quality of the education they received and that none of the questions were answerable with what they'd been taught so far. You definitely marked my sociology paper back in 2017. Back in the day when we handwrote our reports, I accidentally attached a page of a Batman fanfiction comic I was drawing at the end of history report. The report came back with question marks all over the page. Did involve the Riddler? I hate that when your teacher is the toddler. Edit. Lol oops. One of my students didn't proofread his final essay of the term last year and one of his friends had ducked with it when he was away from his computer. I knew because the version I read had some really explicit stuff about the kinds of things he likes to put into his anal cavity. I hadn't finished my geography write-up in year 8. I hated geography and my teacher knew it. And I was that kid in the class who just didn't give a duck. I was trying to get out of a detention by insisting I forgot it. But she demanded to see what I had saved on my computer account. So I finally let in and loaded up. I scrolled to where I had stopped and realized I had written "finish this lol" at the end of my sentence. My teacher and I both saw it at the same time. She was really pissed at me. But later that week I overheard her telling another teacher about it. So I'm glad she found it funny at least. Not that bad I know, but it still makes me wanna shrivel up and die 3 years on. Mandatory not teacher but a student. I concluded a 1-page essay on Freud with "in short, Freud was batshit crazy" or something similar. Meant to erase it. Didn't. Got the paper back with "interesting" written next to it. You're not wrong. In short, Freud had some mother ducking issues. As a student, when I suspect a teacher isn't reading my essays, I occasionally insert things like "put a pancake on your head and if you read this please email me." No one has ever talked to me about it. We had a teacher in high school who was famous for not reading exams and grading on length. I wrote ridiculous amounts of prose that would never pass a serious scrutiny. But never off topic. A friend of mine dedicated a full page to narrate football match, keeping names lowercase to avoid them attracting attention to the individual words. He got a 9/10. No points for girth. Not a teacher. But back in college we were supposed to turn in a typewritten essay assignment. And one of my classmates was the type of guy who copy-pastes mine and never reads it. So I added a little something. I wrote in the middle of the assignment, "This essay is originally written by my name. And if guy's name were to turn this in and not delete this part, then he's an idiot if he thinks he can just copy mine and play Mobile Legends all weekend long." The prof gave me a decent grade, while my classmate got a failing grade. Bonus insult. The prof encircled his paper and read where I put my copyright in and added a crying happy emoji. Hilarious. Surely this would have been a problem before if he copied your work before. College takes it seriously, I thought. We are good friends, so he only threw a fit for a bit, but we worked things out after a session of Dota 2. After that it became a running joke to our group and a few of our classmates. And he wrote his own paper after that incident. I'm proud of how I triggered him to work harder. Would do again to someone if given the opportunity. In college I had submitted an essay that had "buy milk and bread" typed right in the middle of it. When my computer was unattended, my roommate had left me that note, thinking I'd see it, not knowing I was done with my essay. About to print it. My professor, thankfully, was amused. In an essay about academic integrity next to a paragraph this student had clearly been having trouble with, I found a note that simply said, "Duck." Needless to say, it made my night. I still think about this one time in middle school that I couldn't remember the name of an important figure in my paper. I told myself I would Google it and fill it in later. So I substituted a WA everywhere where that person's name was supposed to be. Me being stupid, I turned in my paper literally full of just "every now and then." Can't get over it. Who was the figure? Was it? Or perhaps it was? Or maybe it was? Former student employee of the English Help Lab. Got a ton of bad copy pastes in. that didn't make sense or were so clearly unoriginal and uncited unattributed that we would staple a piece of paper to remind them of the university's policy on plagiarism, etc. Had plenty that they wrote notes to themselves and forgot to delete. For example, put some shit in here about. The most amusing one was, in the days of AOL Instant Messenger, where he was almost certainly in the middle of breaking up with his girlfriend over AIM while writing the paper. And in amongst the text were suddenly things he intended to put in the chat as he is fighting with his girlfriend over what she did and who she was with and on and on. I obviously don't remember it exactly, but it was along the lines of early reports of child soldiers in Rwanda. Then why the hell were you in Brian's car for 20 minutes surfaced in early 2002. Put some shit in here about. That's why I always make those comments bold, different color, and highlighted until I fix them. I'd color certain paragraphs when I worked on essays. My key was red, double check wording, spelling, grammar; blue, reword slightly; green, good to go; black, what I am currently working on; pink, reference; yellow, comment referring to reference; italics, comments I'm making about the below paragraph; bold curses, praise at the teacher/subject myself. I wrote something in a group presentation once and forgot to delete it. Friend wrote something like there were 51, so I wrote 51 what? Unicorns? Because I was trying to get him to label the number to add context, but he didn't see it and left it in for the presentation. When students copy and paste from another website but don't change the font. I used to be a college writing tutor. One student came in with an essay on a movie. I think it was Remember the Titans. He had probably done a replace all spell check without really looking at it. Every instance of University of Virginia was written University of Vagina. If you don't know what a vagina is or how to pronounce it, I guess it could sound like Virginia. Maybe he didn't know how to spell Virginia and so he used spell check and this was the result. Sometimes people do talk to text when writing a paper. Had an essay recently that had the abstract of a journal article just pasted right in there. Still had the headings like data collection and everything. Best part was that the article was irrelevant to the essay question. Another student's name in their MLA heading. Whoops. Sean. Why is Susie's name on the paper you handed in? Well, Mr. Dennis, I can explain. My middle name is Susie. Your name is Sean Susie Smith? Yes. Not a teacher but an immature student and I were assigned to do a project on schizophrenia. My partner changed the spelling of the word each time to schizophrenia without my knowledge. When it came to our presentation everyone was laughing at our slideshow and I had no reason why. So I looked back at the slides and see schizophrenia everywhere. Thankfully the teacher knew I was a good kid and wouldn't do anything like that. So I got full points while my partner got a lesser grade. Sorry about that, my dude. But why? Sheep. Which go bra. Dot. Essay continues normally. What does the fox say? Bark. Before Dropio or Google Docs we emailed drafts of the paper back and forth. The guy responsible for the final draft sent it to the group titled Finished Shit. Beaches. We proofread it. It was good. Told him to fix the title and send it in. The file did not get renamed. He claimed he tried. But the final copy was definitely emailed to the prof as Finished Shit. Beaches. That was fun. I always forget to change the title of my papers before turning them in. Last semester I apparently submitted essays titled, I hate writing about myself, this is garbage. Copy of essay v3 but the real one now. A 5-8. Grapes of Wrath bullshit. English thingy. As a bonus note. This one's MLA heading title was apparently still give this a better title. Untitled document. Duck, I have no clue. My teacher never commented on any of that though. I feel that too on such a deep level. I had a kid begin a paper within the annals of history. Please tell me you laughed as much as I am right now. Yeah, I keep a list of things like that. Back when I was a sub, I got quite a few essays which were more or less CNPs from all these essay pages out there. which of course were rather easy to see through. Hint. Kids, do not plagiarize. Unless you are sure your teacher doesn't give a shit. And don't try to bullshit a bullshitter. There were of course some who tried more than others. The worst actual try to get away with it came from a student who had run an English book review in Google Translate. Swear. And oh my. It was horrific. It was such an obvious machine translation that it took me 2 minutes from I started reading until I had located the original. The award for least effort spent went to another student who had CNP-ed the Wikipedia article, including URL links and everything, not changing the formatting or anything. That took me seconds rather than minutes to verify. Unfortunately, I never got any of those actual forgot to delete anecdotes. But yeah, it was quite fun to track down all those frauds. I've written papers before where it was mostly quotes and more quotes, all properly attributed and connected by a couple of transitional words. I was told I needed to write using my own words. But that made no sense to me because most of the time the ideas I wanted to convey were already written out perfectly in my sources. Indeed, what I have here written makes no claim to novelty in points of detail. And therefore I give no sources. Because it is indifferent to me whether what I have thought has already been thought before me by another. Best comment of the day. I often carried a mini recorder with me in school to record my teacher's lessons. I used tiny tapes. I was in the restroom, and while doing my business, changed out the tape. Door opens. 2 girls walk in. One starts complaining about the math teacher. They concoct a plan. I secretly recorded the conversation. Later, the girl claimed said teacher ordered her to have S** with him, or he would fail her. I silently slipped the tape to the principal. During lunch, I saw the girl sobbing her eyes out as she was led in handcuffs to a cop car and taken away. Said cop happened to be my uncle. We locked eyes, and he winked at me. I learned later from my uncle that the girl was in juvie. She was expelled, and her boyfriend promptly dumped her. My uncle told me later that he knew the tape was one of mine upon seeing it. I recorded my teacher's lessons, so I could listen to them later while doing homework. I'm mostly deaf. Back then, I still had some of my hearing. My grandma often sat with me and signed what was being said on tape to help me understand it. I would never have graduated without her help.